On the eve of the wedding, the groom announced that an unforeseen situation had arisen at his company, forcing him to take an urgent, long-haul business trip. The wedding would have to be postponed. I went to the City Hall's marriage bureau to reschedule our registration date. The clerk looked at me with complete bewilderment. Caleb Davenport has already registered a marriage this morning. Through the glass partition, I saw him. He was walking, holding tightly to the hand of his first love, Eleanor Vance. Their fingers were intertwined. I smirked faintly, waiting for the right moment to wish them a lifetime of happiness. The clerk at the window looked at me again and said softly, "Audrey, perhaps you've made a mistake?" I looked at her computer screen, where Caleb's name was displayed. In the spouse column, it wasn't my name. It read, Eleanor Vance. My fingers were still resting on the edge of my ID, but their tips were turning ice cold. Just an hour ago, Caleb had texted me, saying there was a critical failure at their data center in Cheyenne, and he had to fly out on a red-eye. He wrote that the wedding would have to be postponed. He wrote apologies. And he wrote that upon his return, he would throw an even more lavish celebration for me. And I believed him. I was even worried that in the chaos of packing, he wouldn't have time for paperwork. So I called a cab and came to the marriage bureau myself to move our registration for the next day. Otherwise, our slot in the system would just expire. And as a result, they told me at City Hall that he had already gotten married today. I lifted my head and looked at them through the glass. Caleb was wearing the white shirt I had personally ironed for him the night before. Silver cufflinks gleamed on the cuffs, my gift. The woman next to him was in a cream-colored dress. Her soft hair fell to her shoulders. She was smiling so easily. It wasn't the defiant smile of a victor, but the confident smile of someone who knows for sure they were the one who was chosen. I knew this woman. Eleanor Vance, Caleb's high school sweetheart, a name that had constantly surfaced throughout the 5 years of our relationship. As they stepped away from the window, Eleanor stumbled. Caleb immediately caught her by the arm. He held her tightly. Their fingers intertwined and didn't unclasp. Eleanor said quietly, "Caleb, won't this be too cruel to Audrey?" He was silent for a few seconds. "She'll understand." Hearing that phrase, I suddenly smirked. It turns out that in his eyes, I was supposed to be understanding even of betrayal. The clerk followed my gaze, and something in her expression changed. "Audrey, maybe you should sit down?" I looked away and took back my ticket. "No need," she stammered. "Then we'll cancel your and Caleb's appointment." I answered completely calmly. The clerk nodded and buried her face in the computer. My phone vibrated. A message from the wedding agency. "Audrey, the remaining balance for tomorrow's wedding needs to be confirmed by 6:00 p.m. today. Are we paying according to the original plan?" I looked at the screen. The balance was $50,000. I had organized this wedding almost single-handedly, from booking the hotel, ordering the flowers and the MC, to renting cars for the Davenport relatives. Caleb was busy. His mother had high blood pressure. There were many relatives. Any reason ultimately meant everything fell on my shoulders. I used to think marriage was when two people gradually become one family. Now I understood. Some people don't consider you family. They consider you free labor. I opened my banking app and disabled the scheduled autopay. The agency manager wrote again. "Audrey?" I replied. "Pause all work until my confirmation." I had barely sent the message when the glass door opened. Caleb had finally noticed me. His face turned white in an instant. Eleanor was also stunned. She reflexively tried to hide the marriage certificate in her purse. The movement was quick, but too late. I had already seen everything. Caleb let go of her hand and strode towards me. "Audrey, how did you get here?" I watched as he slowly hid his phone in his pocket. "I came to reschedule the registration date." His Adam's apple bobbed. "Listen to me. I can explain everything." Eleanor stood behind him, her eyes instantly turning red. "Audrey, I'm sorry. I didn't want this. It's just that Caleb saw what a terrible state I've been in lately. He was scared I wouldn't make it, and so I cut her off." "Congratulations on your marriage, Eleanor." She froze, and Caleb frowned. "Audrey, I didn't even look at him, staring only at Eleanor. I was just waiting for the right moment to wish you a lifetime of happiness." With that, I turned and walked away. Caleb caught up to me and grabbed my wrist tightly. "Audrey, don't be like this." His grip was harsh. I looked down at his hand. This hand had just been holding another, and now it was clinging to me, trying to hold on to the person who was supposed to stay put and clean up his mess. Slowly, centimeter by centimeter, I freed my hand. "Caleb, you got married to another woman today?" And tomorrow you plan to make me put on a wedding dress and wait for you at the altar? Panic flickered in his eyes. It's not what you think. Then what is it? He opened his mouth, but Eleanor, standing nearby, said quietly, Audrey, Caleb only promised me a temporary status, just until my emotional state stabilizes. I looked at Caleb. Temporary status. There were quite a few people in the city hall lobby, and some were starting to glance our way. Caleb lowered his voice. This isn't the place for this. I nodded. Indeed. I pulled out my phone and, right in front of him, opened the wedding prep group chat where the three of us and the planners were. The last message was from Caleb, sent last night. Audrey is very tired. Listen to her for everything. I wrote a new one. The wedding is canceled. Reason. The groom registered a marriage with another woman today. A 3-second silence hung in the chat, and then it exploded. The planner. What? The hotel manager. Audrey, are you sure? Caleb's mother. Audrey, what nonsense are you talking about? Caleb's face finally darkened. Audrey, do you have to make such an ugly scene? I put my phone away. This is your scandal, not mine. His expression changed. Before, whenever he got upset about something, I was always the first to back down. I was afraid of fights, afraid that something would go wrong with the wedding. I was afraid that 5 years of a relationship would crumble because of a momentary impulse. But today I suddenly realized, if a relationship is held together only by my concessions, it has long since rotted. I walked out of City Hall. The sun outside was so bright it hurt my eyes. My phone was vibrating nonstop. Catherine, Caleb's mother, was calling. I didn't answer. Caleb called. I didn't pick up either. When the third call came, I looked down and saw Mom on the screen. I answered. My mother's voice sounded anxious. Audrey, what are the Davenports saying? Is the wedding canceled? Did something happen to Caleb? I watched the people passing by and, for the first time, I didn't try to cover for him. Mom, nothing happened to him. Then what? I said, he got married. A long silence hung on the other end. My mom's voice was suddenly hoarse. To who? I turned and glanced back at the glass doors of City Hall. Caleb was still standing there. Eleanor was clinging to his shoulder and looking at him with red eyes, as if I were the one who had wronged her. I looked away. To Eleanor Vance. Mom took a deep breath. Where are you? I'm coming to get you right now. Only then did a lump rise in my throat, and my eyes stung. But I didn't cry. I said, no need. I'm going to our new apartment first. Why are you going there? I looked down at my ring finger, where the engagement ring sat, to get my things. The condo was in Long Island City, Queens, 1,200 square feet. The Davenports had paid the down payment, and the property was in Caleb's name. But the renovations, furniture, appliances, decor, and payments to wedding vendors? I had paid for most of it out of my own pocket, transferring money time and time again. Catherine used to say so smoothly. Audrey, honey, the condo was bought by Caleb before the marriage. Don't worry your pretty head about it. Decorate to your taste. Buy what you like. You two will be living there after all. I didn't nickel and dime back then because I genuinely believed that marriage wasn't about accounting. Now, standing in the living room and looking at the half-hung wedding garlands, I suddenly felt the full absurdity of the situation. Marriage isn't accounting, but human nature must be calculated very carefully. I took my wedding shoes out of the shoe cabinet and put them in a box. Then I pulled a folder of documents from a drawer in the bedroom. It contained contracts with the agency, the hotel, the dress rental agreement, receipts for the jewelry set, receipts for appliances, and records of transfers for the renovation. I had once carefully organized every piece of paper by date. Before, it was for the convenience of organizing the wedding. Now, it was for the convenience of settling the accounts. The lock clicked. Caleb burst into the apartment. He was still in that white shirt. The cuffs were slightly frayed. Seeing the folder of documents in my hands, his face changed. What do you need that for? I put the folder in my suitcase. My things. I'm taking them. He strode over and pressed his hand on the suitcase. Audrey, let's talk. I looked up at him. You're a married man now. What is there for me to talk to you about? Those words stung him. He furrowed his brows tightly. Eleanor is in a very specific situation. So specific that you had to marry her the day before our wedding? Her mother's illness recently got worse. She always dreamed of seeing her daughter get married. Eleanor had a nervous breakdown. She said several times she couldn't take it anymore. I just sacrificed. He trailed off. I finished for him, sacrificed me. You decided that I was reliable, understanding, had loved you for 5 years. The wedding was already prepared, so I wouldn't go anywhere. Irritation flashed in Caleb's eyes. Audrey, don't be so harsh. I never thought of canceling the wedding with you, I laughed. You already married someone else. I can get a divorce, he said very quickly. So quickly, as if the speech had been prepared in advance. When Eleanor gets better, I'll file for divorce. The wedding can be postponed for 6 months at most. I looked at him. 5 years ago, when I first saw Caleb, he was in a hospital hallway helping an old man who had fallen, picking up his medication. I thought then that he was kind, tactful, and responsible. Later, I learned that his kindness was not meant for me. His tact only worked on strangers, and his responsibility only manifested when he didn't have to pay any price for it. I asked, "And who am I in this scheme?" He froze. "You, of course, are the one I will marry." "Caleb, don't you feel disgusted when you say that?" His face darkened. "Audrey, you're emotional right now. I'm not going to argue with you." I pushed his hand off my suitcase. "Then don't." He suddenly grabbed my shoulders. "The wedding can't be canceled." I looked up. Finally, the main point was spoken. "Why?" He looked away. "The invitations have been sent. All our relatives and friends know. The hotel, the agency, the MC, the limos, it's all paid for. If we cancel everything now, how will our families face people?" "Our families?" I laughed out loud. "When you were marrying Eleanor, did you think about how my family would face people?" His tone softened slightly. "Audrey, I know I'm at fault, but the wedding can be held as an engagement party, or we can just say I left urgently on a business trip and have a family dinner. Help me smooth things over, and when I get back, I'll definitely make it up to you." It turns out he didn't run here to apologize, but to make me clean up his mess. I zipped up the suitcase. "Caleb, I will not help you lie." The sound of heels clicked in the hallway. Catherine had arrived. As soon as she crossed the threshold and saw me packing my suitcase, her face twisted. "Audrey, what is this?" "Making a scene about leaving home over some trivial matter?" I looked at her. "Some trivial matter?" Catherine threw her purse on the sofa. "Caleb told me everything. That poor girl, Eleanor, her mother is sick. There's no one by her side. Caleb just helped her in a difficult moment. He's not abandoning you. You're about to get married. Where is your tolerance?" Familiar words. For all 5 years, Catherine had behaved exactly this way. The day Eleanor returned to the States, Caleb went to pick her up at the airport, missing my birthday. Catherine said, "Eleanor doesn't know anyone in this strange city. Be more understanding." When Eleanor had a stomachache in the middle of the night, Caleb left me with a high fever and drove to her. Catherine said, "Audrey, you're healthy and strong, but Eleanor has been frail since childhood." When Eleanor mentioned she wanted some of the soup I had made, Catherine told me to take it to her. She said, "We're going to be one family anyway, don't be stingy." And every time, I endured it, because I thought if I could just hold on until the wedding, everything would be fine. But my concessions did not earn me respect. They only made them think they could wipe their feet on me. I unlocked my phone, opened Caleb's message about the urgent business trip, and shoved the screen under Catherine's nose. "Catherine, he lied to me about a business trip and went to marry another woman. You call that just helping?" Catherine glanced at the screen. For a second, embarrassment flashed on her face, but she immediately straightened her back. Men have their own complexities in business. If you're going to get hung up on every little thing, it only shows your immaturity. I nodded. "Fine, I'll show my maturity." Catherine's face softened slightly. I continued, "The wedding is canceled. I am not paying the balance. The hotel contract is in my name. I will terminate it according to the rules. Arranging accommodations and transportation for your relatives is now your responsibility." Catherine's face changed drastically. "What do you mean?" "I mean that from this second on, the affairs of the Davenport family do not concern me." Caleb's voice grew tense. "Audrey, don't be rash. No one will refund your deposits." "I know. I'll accept that loss." I looked at him. "But I won't spend another dime to put on a show for you and your Eleanor." Catherine trembled with rage. "Audrey, don't forget, this condo belongs to Caleb. You are on Davenport territory right now and you still dare to be so defiant." I glanced around the room. I bought the sofa. I chose the curtains. I paid for the dining table. Every plate in the kitchen was bought by me. I didn't argue, just pulled a printed list from the folder of documents. "You've reminded me at a very convenient time, Catherine." I placed the list on the coffee table. The condo is Caleb's. That means the Davenport family must reimburse me for the renovations, furniture, and appliances, according to this list, factoring in depreciation. Catherine was taken aback. Caleb's face turned ashen. He looked down at the paper. From the air conditioning system to the mattress, from the chandeliers to the dishwasher, from the curtains to the living room rug. On each line was a date, amount, receipt number, or a screenshot of the bank transfer. Total, $78,000. Catherine shrieked. You've decided to count every last penny with us? I grabbed the handle of my suitcase. I didn't count before because I considered you family. I walked to the door and paused for a second. That's not the case anymore. When the door slammed shut, I heard Caleb scream my name. I didn't turn back. The elevator doors closed. My phone vibrated. Eleanor had updated her social media story. The photo showed her and Caleb standing close together, holding a marriage certificate. The caption read, "After so many years, I finally have you." I looked at that line for 2 seconds, took a screenshot, and then forwarded it to the wedding agency manager. For tomorrow, cancel all decorations related to the name Caleb. The reply came quickly. Audrey, are you sure? I replied, I'm sure. The next morning, I got a call from the bridal salon. The consultant's voice was very awkward. Audrey, is it a good time for you to come to the salon? I was just organizing my receipts. Hearing her tone, I put down my pen. What happened? She lowered her voice. A certain Eleanor Vance came in and said that Caleb Davenport sent her to try on your main wedding dress. My hand holding the phone froze. Did she put it on? She just put it on. She hasn't taken any pictures yet. I closed my notebook. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Chloe drove me, my best friend since college. Over the years, she knew the story of my relationship with Caleb better than anyone. The whole way, she cursed. Does that Caleb have any brains at all? Not only did he run off to City Hall with his first love, but he also put her in your dress. I looked out the window. He didn't send her. Chloe was stunned. How do you know? Caleb isn't that stupid yet, I added calmly. Eleanor is doing this on purpose. She's testing my boundaries. She wants to declare that she's taken not only Caleb, but everything I prepared for myself. The salon was in Midtown Manhattan. When I walked in, the atmosphere was so tense you could cut it with a knife. Eleanor was standing in front of the fitting room mirror. She was wearing the form-fitting satin gown I had spent 3 months choosing, with a perfect shoulder line and hand-sewn pearl detailing. It was the only dress out of dozens I had tried on that made me feel like I was truly getting married. And now it was on her. Seeing me, she panicked for a second, but then immediately put on a mask of helplessness. Audrey, don't get the wrong idea. I just wanted to check the size. Caleb said it would be needed for the wedding anyway. I walked up to her. Take it off. Eleanor's eyes reddened. I know you're angry, but the dress is just hanging here unused. Caleb said the wedding is just postponed for now and we can't let so much go to waste. I looked at the consultant. Whose name is on the contract? The consultant immediately answered, Yours, Audrey. Who paid the deposit? You did. Who is the renter? You are. I nodded. Then have this stranger take off my dress. Eleanor's face went white. A woman who had come with her couldn't stand it. It's just a dress. Eleanor and Caleb are already married. What's the big deal if she tries it on? Chloe scoffed coldly. They're married. So what? They're heroes. Does a marriage certificate give you the right to steal other people's things? The woman choked. Eleanor bit her lip. Audrey, do you have to be so aggressive? I already apologized to you, but you can't force love. Caleb has always loved only me. You know that yourself. I looked at her in the mirror. She was standing in my dress, telling me Caleb had always loved only her. A couple of years ago, a scene like this would have broken my heart. Now, I only felt the absurdity of the situation. I asked, Eleanor, did you know our registration was tomorrow? Her eyelashes fluttered. I knew, she admitted. And you knew about the wedding in 3 days too, I answered for her. Last night, Caleb lied to me about a business trip. She fell silent. I pulled out my phone and opened the screenshot of her photo with the marriage certificate. When you posted this photo, you hid it from me. She froze. I smirked. No, you made it public so I would be sure to see it. Chloe, standing next to me, gasped. Eleanor clutched the hem of the dress. Audrey, I was just so happy. I've waited for him for so many years. And so, I took a step forward. You waited for him for so many years. So I'm obligated to give you my 5 years of life? Tears started streaming down Eleanor's face. I didn't want to take what was yours. I looked down at the dress. And what are you wearing right now? She was petrified. The consultant was too scared to make a sound. At that moment, Caleb burst into the salon. Seeing Eleanor in the wedding dress, and then noticing me, his face darkened instantly. Eleanor, what are you doing here? Eleanor, as if finally finding support, started crying even harder. Caleb, I just wanted to save some money. Everything for the wedding is already ordered. If Audrey is refusing, we could Caleb cut her off. Take off the dress. Eleanor was dumbfounded. She clearly didn't expect Caleb to make her undress in front of me. But Caleb didn't do it for me. He was just afraid the scandal would get out of control. I looked at him. You're just in time, Mr. Davenport. He flinched at the formal address. Audrey, I handed the rental agreement to the consultant. I'm canceling the rental. Keep the deposit according to the terms of the agreement. Refund the rest to the account it was charged from. The consultant nodded. Caleb tried to stop me. But you loved this dress so much. I did. I looked at Eleanor in the mirror, and now it's dirty. Eleanor's face turned ashen. Caleb lowered his voice. Audrey, don't say such cruel things. I looked up. Her wearing my dress isn't cruel, but me saying the word dirty is cruel? He was at a loss for words. Chloe just started applauding. You've perfected the double standard, Mr. Davenport. Eleanor went into the fitting room. Caleb stood in front of me. His voice sounded tired. Audrey, I know these last 2 days have been hard on you, but please, don't cancel all the bookings yet. Give me some time. I'll sort everything out. Sort out what? You're Eleanor? You're already married to her. He fell silent. I continued. Caleb, don't treat marriage like an umbrella. Today you lend it to her. Tomorrow you return it to me. A flash of pain crossed his eyes. That's not what I meant. You're the one I took the refund receipt from the consultant and signed it. You just didn't expect me to refuse to take you back. Eleanor came out of the fitting room in her own clothes. Her eyes were red, her voice quiet. Audrey, I'm sorry. I'll pay for the dry cleaning for the dress. I glanced at her. No need. Consider this small thing my wedding gift to you. Caleb's face darkened even more. I turned and walked out. As soon as I was outside, my phone started blowing up. In the Davenport family group chat, Catherine had written a long message. Dear relatives, the wedding is temporarily postponed. Audrey threw a tantrum, demanding that Caleb sign over a share of the apartment to her and buy her expensive gifts. We always treated her with all our hearts, and she showed such ingratitude. Below, a chorus of agreement immediately followed. Wow, modern girls are so calculating. Haggling before the wedding. That's so low. Caleb is such a great guy, and she's still turning her nose up. Chloe, peering at my screen, was seething with anger. How dare she? I looked at the screen and suddenly smiled. She dared because before, I never defended myself. I opened the input field. This time, I wouldn't be silent. The Davenport family chat had over 90 people. I hadn't wanted to join initially, but Catherine insisted. Audrey, dear, you'll soon be a full-fledged Davenport. You need to communicate with the family. After joining the chat, I sent greetings on holidays, helped Catherine answer relatives' questions, and remembered everyone's habits for Caleb. Which aunt couldn't have sweets because of diabetes? Which uncle liked his tea strong? Whose child got into college and needed a monetary gift? Caleb never cared about these little things. Catherine didn't bother either. She would just say, Audrey is so thoughtful, a good hostess. And now, in this same chat, she was painting me as a money-grubbing shrew. I looked at the cascading accusations and didn't rush to respond. First, I opened my photo gallery. Photo 1. Caleb's message from yesterday about the urgent business trip and postponing the wedding. Photo 2. A screenshot from Eleanor's social media with the marriage certificate. Photo 3. The receipt for the cancellation of the dress rental. Photo 4. A summary table of all my expenses for the renovation and the wedding. I sent these 4 photos to the chat, one after another. Instant silence fell over the chat. About 10 seconds later, Caleb's aunt sent a question mark. What does this mean? Caleb married whom? Catherine immediately recorded a voice message. I didn't listen. Then she started typing. Audrey, don't post this nonsense here. If there are problems, we'll solve them in person. I replied. Catherine, weren't you the first one to write in the chat that I was extorting a share of the apartment? No one in the chat said a word. I continued writing. I did not demand a share of the apartment, nor did I ask for expensive gifts. The only reason for canceling the wedding is this. Caleb lied to me about a business trip, and on the same day, went to City Hall and married Eleanor Vance. Finally, Caleb appeared. Audrey, delete this. I looked at that word and laughed. His first reaction was still to command me. I replied, I will not. The chat exploded like hot oil. Who is Eleanor Vance? What about the wedding in 3 days? Caleb, is this true? Married to one, but having a wedding with another. This is fraud, Catherine panicked. It's not what you think. Eleanor is in a specific situation. Caleb just helped. Chloe, next to me, remarked sarcastically, helped her all the way to City Hall. A real Boy Scout. I couldn't help but chuckle, but after the laughter, a void formed in my chest. I spent 5 years on a family like this. In the kitchen, my mom was pouring me hot water. Hearing my chuckle, she peeked around the corner. Audrey, are you sure you're okay? I nodded. I'm sure. She came and sat next to me. Don't keep it all inside. I put my phone away. Mom, I used to tolerate too much. Yes. She paused. You just really wanted to build a good family. At those words, tears welled up again. I wasn't a fool. I just tried, sincerely loved, sincerely built a nest. But trying doesn't mean you let people wipe their feet on you. The phone rang again. This time, Caleb in a private message. What are you trying to achieve by creating this circus? I replied, at least no one is calling me an extortionist anymore. He called immediately. I took the call. His voice was muffled. Audrey, can you act like an adult? All the relatives are blowing up our phones. Mom's blood pressure has shot up. And so, write in the chat that there was just a misunderstanding between us. I laughed. A misunderstanding? Is a marriage certificate also a misunderstanding? He was silent for a moment. I told you I'll get a divorce. That's between you and Eleanor. And the wedding. Finally, he got to the main point. My tone was calm. Is cancelled. No, he protested almost immediately. Many relatives have already bought tickets. If we cancel now, how will I explain it? Tell the truth, Audrey. His voice suddenly broke into a scream. Do you have to destroy me? I clutched the phone, and that last drop of bitterness in my chest suddenly dissolved. He thinks I'm destroying him. But he doesn't think he destroyed the wedding I had been preparing for 6 months. He doesn't think he destroyed 5 years of my trust. He doesn't think he trampled on my parents' dignity in front of our relatives. I said, Caleb, I didn't trample your dignity. You gave it up yourself. Heavy breathing came from the other end. After a long time, he said, tomorrow evening, come to our house for dinner. The parents from both sides will sit down and talk. I wanted to refuse, but he added, you wanted to settle the accounts. Come and say it all to their faces. I looked at the folder lying on the table. To their faces? Fine, to their faces. Okay, I said. When I hung up, my mom immediately frowned. You're still going to the Davenports? I opened the spreadsheet with the expenses again. Some bills need to be presented in person. Mom looked at me. Her eyes showed concern, but also a hint of pride. I'll go with you. I shook my head. No need. Chloe immediately raised her hand. I'll go with you. I looked at her. You're not going either. She was indignant. Audrey, don't play the hero. I folded the papers. I'm not. I looked at them both. For these 5 years, I walked this path myself. Now I have to walk out of it myself. The Davenports family dinner was held at an old, traditional steakhouse. When I entered, the private room was already full of people. Catherine sat at the head of the table with a long face. Caleb sat next to her, dark circles under his eyes. He must not have slept all night. Caleb's aunts, uncles, and cousins were there. It looked less like a dinner and more like a tribunal. I pushed the door open, and all eyes turned to me at once. Catherine started first. Audrey, you still have the nerve to show up. I hung my bag on the back of a chair and sat down. Didn't you invite me to clear things up? She scoffed coldly. What you posted in the chat yesterday disgraced our family in front of everyone. Today, in front of the relatives, you must apologize to Caleb. Silence fell in the room. Caleb frowned. Mom. Catherine glared at him. You be quiet. She's lost all fear because you've been too lenient with her. I looked at the table, laden with dishes. Almost all of them were Caleb's favorite foods, and not a single one of mine. Before, at all such dinners, I would be bustling about, pouring tea for the elders, serving food. Catherine would praise me in front of everyone. Audrey is so understanding, not like these spoiled girls nowadays. And Caleb would sit next to her, taking it for granted. Today, I didn't touch the utensils and didn't pour tea. I just asked, What am I supposed to apologize for? Catherine slammed her hand on the table. You slandered Caleb in the chat. I took out my phone and placed the screenshot from Eleanor on the table. The marriage certificate is real. Caleb's text about the business trip is also real. Which part of this is slander? Catherine choked. Caleb's aunt asked quietly, Caleb, did you really marry this Eleanor? Caleb was silent. Silence meant consent. The relatives' expressions changed. Catherine immediately started chattering. Eleanor is in a specific situation. Her mother is seriously ill. Caleb, out of the kindness of his heart. Audrey, you and Caleb have been together for 5 years. Can't you be more understanding? I looked at her. Catherine, in your youth, would you have been understanding if Daniel had married another woman? Catherine turned purple. How dare you talk to your elders like that? First, teach me how to be a fiancé. I pulled the folder of receipts from my bag. The heavy folder landed on the table with a thud. Everyone turned. Catherine asked warily, What is that? These are all the expenses I paid for the Davenport family over these 5 years. Caleb's face changed. Audrey, you don't have to do this. I do. I opened the first page. Last October, Catherine said they were short on cash for the apartment renovation and asked me to pay for the air conditioners and built-in furniture. Total, $30,000. The transfer statements are on the next page. I turned the page. In January of this year, the Davenport family said they needed high-end alcohol for the banquet. I made a down payment of $12,000. Third page. In March, Caleb said Daniel needed money for a medical examination. I transferred $10,000. The payment purpose states loan. Catherine turned red. That was your voluntary decision. I nodded. That's why I didn't ask for it back before. I looked up. Now, our relationship is over. Voluntary help also has its limits. Debts must be repaid, and purchases must be paid for. Caleb's uncle frowned. Audrey, you loved each other. Counting every penny like this, it's not very nice. I looked at the uncle. And when Caleb married another woman, was that nice? The uncle fell silent. Catherine was trembling with anger. You just want money. Yes, I answered very quickly. The whole room froze. I looked at Catherine. Before, I didn't need the money because I wanted to marry Caleb. Now he's married, and of course I need my money. Caleb closed his eyes. Audrey, I'll pay it all back. When? He stammered. I pushed the printed itemization toward him. Within 7 days. Catherine shrieked. Are you crazy? Where are we going to get that kind of money in 7 days? I replied. You can pay in installments, but you need to sign a debt repayment agreement. To Catherine, this sounded like a wild joke. You want us to write you an IOU? Not an IOU, I corrected her, an agreement. At that moment, Caleb's father, Daniel, who had been silent until then, spoke up. He had poor health and had been sitting in the corner with a grim face. Catherine, sign it. Catherine was stunned. Daniel! The father looked at Caleb. You made this mess. You clean it up. Caleb's face turned gray. I was a little surprised. Over the years, Daniel had spoken very little, and I had always thought he tacitly approved of his wife's antics. But now he looked at me and said hoarsely, Audrey, thank you. You've helped me a lot with doctors over the years. No one in the room made a sound. My fingers tightened slightly. This was the first person in the Davenport family to thank me, but it was too late. I nodded. Take care of yourself, Daniel. Catherine hadn't given up and wanted to say something, but the door to the room opened. Eleanor stood on the threshold, wearing a light coat, her eyes red. Upon entering, she looked timidly at Catherine. Mom, I seem to have come at a bad time. Because of that word, Mom, a deathly silence fell over the room. Catherine's face froze. Caleb shot up. Eleanor, why did you come? Eleanor said quietly, I saw in the chat that everyone was attacking Audrey. I was afraid she would pressure you. She looked at me. Audrey, if you want to blame someone, blame me. Don't pressure Caleb and his mom. I smirked. Eleanor, you've come at just the right time. I closed the folder. Since you're Caleb's wife now, you should also hear about the Davenport's debts and wedding problems. The image of a weak and defenseless woman cracked. Eleanor clearly hadn't expected me to drag her into this financial dispute. She froze in the doorway, not knowing whether to enter or leave. Caleb went to her and took her hand. Go home. But Eleanor, with red eyes, shook her head. I don't want you to handle this alone. These words were spoken very clearly. The gazes of the relatives in the room immediately became complicated. Yesterday, they were scolding me for being calculating, but today, seeing Eleanor in the role of the legal wife, they finally realized one thing. Caleb was really married. Then who was I in this story? And what was the wedding in 3 days supposed to be? Catherine was now completely embarrassed. She wanted to protect Eleanor but was afraid of her relative's judgment. She had to force out, "Eleanor, dear, you're not well. Sit down." Eleanor obediently sat next to Caleb, in the seat that was meant for me. I felt no emotion. I just pushed the debt agreement to the middle of the table. "Since everyone is here, sign it." Catherine was indignant. "Don't push it." I looked at her. "You're the one pushing it, Catherine. Your son has already registered a marriage with another woman, but you still wanted to force me to pay the rest of the wedding costs, entertain your guests, and endure rumors." I opened the last page. There are 3 categories here. First, clear debts, with correspondence and receipts. Second, wedding expenses, with contracts in my name. I'll deal with them myself. But whatever the Davenport family actually uses, they will have to pay for. Third, renovations and appliances in the apartment. I can take my things, and what I can't, you will return in cash, with depreciation. Hearing about the apartment, Eleanor's eyes darted around. She looked at Caleb. "Caleb, isn't the apartment yours?" Caleb's face darkened even more. "The apartment is mine," I added. "The bare walls are his. And almost everything that makes it livable was paid for by me." Eleanor's fingers clenched. I noticed it. She didn't just want Caleb. She wanted the stable life that came with him. Too bad she didn't know that I had paid for half of that stability, investing dollar by dollar. Catherine hissed through her teeth, "Take your things." "We don't need them." I nodded. "Good. The movers will be here tomorrow at 10 a.m. Caleb immediately blurted out, "No." I looked at him. "Why?" He faltered, because he understood that if I took everything, this family apartment would turn into a cold, concrete box, and Eleanor would see that he hadn't prepared any comfort for her. Daniel spoke up again. "What can be compensated with money, give back with money. Don't let it come to public disgrace." I looked at him. "Agreed." Daniel sighed. "Give me the papers." Catherine panicked. Daniel's voice became harsh. "Haven't you had enough shame?" Catherine fell silent. Caleb took the agreement and looked at the numbers. He looked up at me. His voice became hoarse. "Audrey, does it have to come to this?" I asked a counter-question. "When you married Eleanor, did you think about what it would lead to?" His gaze dimmed. Eleanor immediately reached out and covered his hand with hers. The gesture pricked me like a light needle prick, not with pain, but as a reminder that this man no longer belonged to me and was no longer worth my anguish. I stood up. "That's all for today. I expect a response on the agreement tomorrow. First payment within 7 days." Catherine scoffed coldly. "You think you've won?" "In the end, no one marries calculating women." I picked up my bag. "That's great." I looked at her. "The thing I'm most afraid of right now is someone asking me to marry them." With that, I turned and left. When I left the restaurant, a cold night wind was blowing. I had barely reached the road when Caleb caught up to me. "Audrey." I stopped. He stood on the steps. There was exhaustion in his eyes and a sort of belated panic. I know I did the wrong thing. I was silent. He took a step forward. "But we don't have to throw away all our 5 years. I looked at him. "You're the one who threw away the 5 years. His voice grew quieter. "Eleanor was really in a bad place then. She said her mom's greatest wish was to see her marry me. I just wanted to help her fulfill that wish." "And did you ask about my wish?" He was taken aback. I said, "My wish was to go to City Hall with you tomorrow, and in 3 days, to wear the dress I chose myself, and to have a wedding with you in front of our friends and family." His Adam's apple bobbed. "Audrey, and you took my wish and gave it to her to fulfill her dream." After those words, he turned pale as a sheet. I didn't look at him anymore, turned, and got into a taxi. Returning home, I put everything in order. The agreement, the receipts, the list of items from the apartment, and made backup copies. Chloe, seeing this, slammed her hand on the table. "Awesome, but I don't think this Eleanor will give up so easily." I knew that too. She had put in so much effort to drag Caleb to City Hall on the eve of my wedding, clearly not for just a piece of paper. And sure enough, at 11 p.m., I received a friend request from Eleanor. The accompanying message read, "Audrey, let's talk. I don't want Caleb to be torn apart." I looked at the message and clicked accept. She wrote immediately, "Tomorrow at 3 p.m., the cafe on Madison Avenue." I replied, "Okay." Chloe frowned. "Are you seriously going to go?" I put the phone face down on the table. "I'm going." "Why?" I looked at the last page of the purchase list, at the furniture for the apartment. The way Eleanor looked when the apartment was mentioned, I couldn't unsee it. She got flustered, and when people get flustered, they reveal their true motives. The next day at 3 o'clock, I entered the cafe. Eleanor was already sitting at a table by the window. Today she wasn't wearing a white dress, but a soft blue knit sweater that made her look even more fragile. Seeing me, she stood up. "Audrey." I sat down. "Talk." She bit her lip. "I know you hate me." "I wouldn't say that," I replied. "Hate is a waste of time." Her mask almost cracked. The waiter brought coffee. She stared into the cup for a long time before quietly saying, "Caleb and I met before you." I nodded. "And?" "We almost started dating back then. But then I moved abroad, and he got with you out of spite." I looked at her. "Is that what Caleb told you?" She lifted her head. "Isn't that how it was?" I laughed. "He told me you were just an unfinished story from his youth." Eleanor's face changed. I continued. "He said he had long since let you go, that it was you who couldn't accept it after returning to the States. And he asked me to be understanding of your situation." The spoon in her hand froze. Ripples spread across the surface of the coffee. It turns out Caleb hadn't just been lying to me. He had been lying to her too. Eleanor quickly composed herself. "Whatever he said, the ring is on my finger now." "Yes," I nodded. "So go and deal with him, not with me." She stared at me. "Can you not demand the money back from the Davenports?" Caleb is under so much pressure right now. I almost laughed out loud. "Eleanor, in what capacity have you come to ask me to forgo my money?" She turned pale. "I just think that since you loved each other after all, so he betrays me, and I should save him money?" Eleanor's voice dropped. "With your calculations, you're only proving to Caleb how mercenary you are." I leaned back in my chair. "What do I care what he thinks?" She choked. I looked at her and suddenly asked, "Eleanor, are you aware that your name is not on the apartment documents?" She pressed her lips together. "We're already married." "In the future, naturally." "There will be no future," I interrupted. "That apartment was bought before the marriage. Your signature at City Hall doesn't give you the right to a single square foot of it." Her face finally changed. I continued, "Moreover, I will take back the renovations, furniture, and appliances, or demand the money for them. If you want to live there, first make sure the Davenports have the money to furnish it all over again." The mask of helplessness finally cracked. "Audrey, do you have to be so cruel?" I looked at her. "And when you were trying on my wedding dress, did that not seem cruel to you?" She gritted her teeth. "Caleb owed me that." "Then go and demand it from him." I pushed my cup away. "And don't touch what's mine." I stood up, about to leave. Suddenly, Eleanor said, "Do you think he really loved you?" I stopped. She had found a weak spot and started talking faster. "He told me you were convenient to live with. Pliant, not difficult. But every year he was with you, he thought of me." I turned around. A triumphant, malicious gleam finally appeared in her eyes. "Audrey, you were just a safe harbor for him. If I had heard this 2 years ago, I probably would have broken down. But now, I only felt sorry for Caleb. He used one person's sincere feelings as a tool for comfort and passed off another's obsession as love. In the end, he did no one any good." I said, "Thank you for telling me." Eleanor was taken aback. "I'll remember those words." I walked out of the cafe, and my phone immediately rang. "Caleb." I took the call. His first sentence was, "Did you see Eleanor?" I looked across the street. Caleb's car was parked there. "It turns out he had been here the whole time," I replied. "What, did she call you in tears?" I smirked. "Caleb, are you calling me to interrogate me?" A pause hung on the other end. Then his voice softened. "No, I just—" "Audrey, don't hurt her." At that moment, the last of my emotions for him died. "Don't worry, I don't know how to hurt people as professionally as you do." I hung up. In the evening, when I returned to my building's courtyard, Caleb was standing by the entrance. In his hands was a small box, the male version of our engagement rings. In the lamplight, he looked disheveled and tired. "Audrey." I didn't stop. He stepped in my way. "Can we try to start over?" "No." His breathing hitched. "I only found out today that it was her idea to go to the bridal salon." I already reprimanded her. I pressed the call button for the elevator. That doesn't concern me. And the fact that we got married, I'll sort that out too. I'll divorce her. The elevator numbers slowly changed. I watched the display, not looking at him. Caleb, you know what's most disgusting about you? He froze. You treat marriage like an object that can be regifted. He turned pale. I turned to him. Today, for Eleanor's sake, you postpone the wedding with me. Tomorrow, for my sake, you're ready to divorce Eleanor. You think that's a sign of great love? In reality, you're just an egoist. The elevator arrived, the doors opened. I stepped inside. He put his hand out, preventing the doors from closing. Audrey, I really regret it. I looked at his hand. Move it. He didn't budge. If I file for divorce right now, will you? I won't, I answered. I will not be your backup plan. His hand slowly dropped. The elevator doors closed. I saw that in the last second, his phone rang. The name on the screen was Paul, manager. I knew what it was about. The manager was about to inform him that the banquet hall at the hotel was no longer available for the Davenport family. The next morning, Catherine, Caleb, and Eleanor showed up at the hotel. Paul, the manager, called me. I was at the apartment, checking the lists with the movers. Paul's voice was desperate. Audrey, the Davenports are at the hotel now, demanding the banquet hall. They're shouting that it's their wedding. I asked, did they bring the contract with them? No. The contract lists you, and you paid for it. Then act according to the contract. Paul stammered. Caleb's wife is making a huge scene. I smirked. Which wife exactly? A silence hung on the other end for a second. Paul was clearly stumped by that question. I grabbed my bag. I'm on my way. In the hotel lobby, Catherine was making a scene at the registration desk. We've already invited all the guests. What right do you have to take away our hall? We booked it for the Davenport wedding. Paul patiently explained. Catherine, the party to the contract is Audrey. She canceled the original decorations and paid the penalties according to the agreement. Catherine slammed her hand on the counter. Who does she think she is? Not even part of the family, and she's already canceling weddings. I approached. I'm canceling it by right of the person who signed the contract and paid for it. Catherine turned around. Seeing me, she scowled even more. Audrey, you have the nerve to show your face here? I handed a copy of the contract to Paul. Paul, handle everything by the book. Eleanor stood next to Caleb, whimpering softly. Audrey, the guests will be arriving soon. You're embarrassing, Caleb. I looked at her. And when you were getting married at City Hall, did you not think about embarrassment? She turned pale. Caleb's voice sounded tired. Audrey, we can pay for this hall again. Paul immediately intervened. Mr. Davenport, unfortunately, after canceling the wedding decorations, Audrey has already rebooked the venue for another event. Caleb was stunned. So was Catherine. What other event? A farewell banquet, I answered. What nonsense is this? A farewell to a mistaken relationship, a farewell to useless efforts, and a farewell to the Davenports. Paul was trying with all his might to maintain a professional expression. Chloe, standing behind me, was choking on laughter so hard her shoulders were shaking. Caleb's face contorted. Do you have to hold it on this exact day? I chose this day, I answered, looking him in the eyes. You and Eleanor can find another restaurant. After all, you are the legally married couple. Eleanor couldn't take it, but the invitations have already been sent out. This is the address listed. I sent out the invitations. She faltered. I enunciated every word clearly. The bride's name on the invitations is mine. Catherine screamed, You're just getting revenge. Yes, I admitted, completely calmly. It's legal and justified revenge. Pain splashed in Caleb's eyes. Audrey, stop. I no longer looked at him and turned to Paul. The banners, the photos, the vows, take them all down. The remaining flowers can stay, but dim the lights. I'll send the presentation for the screen later. Paul nodded. Understood. Catherine lunged at me, trying to snatch the contract. Chloe and the hotel security immediately blocked her way. Ma'am, one more move and we'll call the police for disorderly conduct. Catherine pointed a finger at me. Audrey, you won't get away with this. I looked at her. Catherine, you haven't gotten away with anything for free. I turned and walked away. Behind me, I heard Eleanor's muffled cry. Caleb. What about our wedding? Caleb didn't answer, because there was nothing for him to say. After the hotel, I went to the apartment. The movers were already there. They were dismantling and carrying out everything on my list. When Caleb rushed in, The living room was already half empty. He stood in the doorway and stared at the removed curtains with a pale face. Are you really taking everything? I was checking off items on my list. Yes, but we chose this together. No, I chose it, and you just nodded. He fell silent. A mover asked, Audrey, are we taking the mattress from the bedroom too? Yes. Caleb suddenly stepped forward. Leave that. I looked at him. There were even tears in his eyes. Audrey, leave at least something. Something that was ours. I capped my pen. Caleb, there is nothing ours here. I tapped my finger on the printout. I paid. Those words hit him so hard he couldn't say another word. When it was all over, only bare walls and a couple of cheap chairs the Davenports had bought at the very beginning remained in the living room. Eleanor came in after Caleb. Seeing the empty apartment, her face fell. She probably realized for the first time that Caleb's vaunted apartment had turned into an empty box after my departure. She asked quietly, Caleb, are we going to live here? He didn't answer. I signed the delivery receipt and walked to the door. Caleb suddenly said, Audrey, you weren't like this before. I turned around. What was I like? His voice broke. Before, you didn't fuss over things like this. I nodded. That's precisely why you all forgot that these things actually belong to me. He stood in the middle of the empty living room and seemed to only now realize, I'm not throwing a tantrum. I'm just, step by step, erasing myself from his life. The conflict over the empty apartment erupted between them faster than I expected. The next day, Chloe sent me a screenshot from the Davenport relatives chat. Caleb's cousin wrote, Did you hear? Eleanor is complaining that the apartment is empty, demanding renovations and to be put on the deed, otherwise she refuses to live there. Below, someone added sarcastically, Just married and already demanding a share. Audrey invested $78,000 and didn't mention the documents once. The Davenports traded gold for glass. I read the message and didn't reply. The wind had changed direction, but I no longer needed their approval. In the afternoon, Eleanor asked me to meet again, this time at a pastry shop. I didn't want to go, but she sent a message. Don't you want to know why Caleb was so desperate to marry me? I went, not because I still cared about Caleb, but because I wanted to tear the final mask off this story. Eleanor was sitting in a booth. She looked much worse than a few days ago. Seeing me, she no longer played the weak lamb. Audrey, you won. I sat down. I wasn't competing with you, she smirked. Don't play the saint. You came to watch Caleb and me embarrass ourselves. I poured myself some tea. If you weren't embarrassing yourselves, I wouldn't be watching. She faltered, then after a moment said, Caleb didn't even tell me that everything in the apartment was bought by you. And he didn't tell me about your registration either. She pressed her lips together. I looked at her. Well, tell me, why was the rushed marriage necessary? She was silent for a long time before saying, My mom really is sick, but not as terminally as he told everyone. I wasn't surprised at all. So the threat of death was a lie? Not a lie, an exaggeration. Her voice was quiet. My mom never liked Caleb. She thought he was a coward back then for not choosing me. When she got sick, I said I wanted to marry him. She was against it. I panicked and lied to Caleb that my mom's only wish was to see me married. I asked, and he believed it? Eleanor smiled sarcastically. He wanted to believe it. Bullseye. Caleb wasn't deceived. He just chose to believe in a reason that made him look like a noble romantic. Eleanor continued, He told me you wouldn't go anywhere, that you were reliable, cared about reputation, and even if you found out, you would just wait until he sorted everything out. I held my cup. Not a single string vibrated inside me, so you calculated everything. She looked at me. He calculated it, not me. I shifted my gaze to her hand. A ring adorned her finger. Not the design I had seen before, but I remembered that the wedding ring Caleb had bought for me was in the safe in the new apartment. I asked, Is the ring mine too? Eleanor's face tensed. I laughed. I see you've helped yourself to quite a lot. She flared up. Audrey, I didn't come here to fight. Then why? She took a deep breath. Withdraw your financial claims against the Davenports. I looked at her. On what grounds? I can make Caleb apologize to you. I almost laughed. Eleanor, do you even understand the position you're in? She grew sullen. I put my cup on the table. I don't need apologies. I need my money. She gritted her teeth. You know perfectly well the Davenports don't have that kind of cash right now. Then they'll pay in installments. And the apartment? You cleaned it out. Caleb is having such a hard time. I looked at her and finally understood why she had called me. You want to move into a ready-made apartment, but you don't want to pay a single penny for it. She turned pale. I continued. You wanted the status of Caleb's wife. You wanted a ready-made apartment, a ready-made wedding, a status-filled life. But you suddenly discovered that Caleb didn't prepare all of this. I did. Eleanor's wall of fragility finally crumbled. Audrey, do you have to push everything to the brink? I looked at her. When you put on my wedding dress, did that not seem like the brink to you? She hissed. Caleb owed me that. Then go and demand it from him. I pushed my cup away. And don't touch what's mine. I stood up to leave. Eleanor yelled at my back. You think he'll just let you go? On your wedding day, he will definitely make you come back. I stopped for a second, turned around and looked at her. Well, let him try. The day of the originally planned wedding arrived. Flowers still stood at the entrance to the hotel, but the welcome banner no longer featured my and Caleb's photo. We hadn't had a pre-wedding photo shoot. Caleb had always put it off, citing work, promising to take pictures right before the wedding. In the end, all I got was his marriage to someone else. So today, the banner had only one inscription: Audrey's farewell banquet, and below, in small print, thank you to the past, and thank you for opening my eyes. Chloe, seeing this, teared up a little. Audrey, are you sure about all this? I adjusted my beige pantsuit. I'm sure. I didn't wear a wedding dress, nor did I wear black. I wasn't going to mourn a rotten relationship. The hall was mostly filled with the relatives and friends to whom I had originally sent invitations. I had warned everyone in advance. Those who wanted to come could simply have dinner. Those who didn't, I didn't insist. My mom came. She looked very elegant, took my hand and said, "You are beautiful today." I hugged her with a smile. "Mom, I'm sorry," she patted my back. "You have nothing to be sorry for." At those words, I almost cried. At 7:30 p.m., the Davenports arrived. Catherine was in the red dress she had prepared for the wedding. Her face was darker than a thundercloud. Caleb followed. Not in a groom's suit, but just in a dark blazer. Eleanor came in a white dress, not a wedding dress, but flashy enough. As soon as they entered, all eyes turned to them. Whispers started in the crowd. Those are the ones who got married. What are they doing here today? The Davenports are really something else. Catherine, burning with shame, headed straight for me. Audrey, you called us here. To publicly humiliate us? I replied. You overestimate yourselves, Catherine. I didn't call you, you came on your own. She became even angrier. Caleb looked at me. His voice was hoarse. Audrey, let's talk. There will be no talk of feelings today. I pointed to the screen on the stage. Only calculations. The screen lit up. First slide. A general table of wedding expenses. Down payments for the hotel, agency, photographers, MC, gifts for guests, room reservations, car rentals. For each item, the date of payment, and my account number. The guests quieted down. Catherine's face contorted. Why did you put that up? I took the microphone. My voice carried throughout the hall. Dear friends and relatives, today was supposed to be my wedding to Caleb. 3 days ago, he informed me that he was flying out on an urgent business trip, and the wedding was postponed. The slide changed to a screenshot of Caleb's text. I continued. That same day, at City Hall, I learned that he had registered a marriage with Eleanor Vance. Third slide. A screenshot from Eleanor's social media with the marriage certificate. A loud gasp went through the hall. Eleanor turned pale and whispered, Caleb. Caleb stood as if rooted to the spot, not moving. I looked at the audience. This wedding came at a great cost. The Davenport family claimed in family chats that I was extorting them to sign over the apartment. Today, I am here only to state the facts. The slides changed one after another. No exaggerations, no insults, just clear numbers. Who paid, who benefited, who spread rumors, who betrayed. The faces of the Davenport relatives grew darker and darker. Those who had cursed me just yesterday now hung their heads. Catherine rushed at me to snatch the microphone, but Chloe and hotel security stopped her. Catherine shrieked, Audrey, you are too cruel. I looked at her. Catherine, I'm just explaining your words from the chat to everyone, face to face. At that moment, Eleanor suddenly burst into tears. Audrey, I know you hate me, but don't destroy Caleb's life like this. He's just too kind. That's why he helped me. I turned to her. Eleanor, are you sure you want to use the word kind? She froze. I switched the slide. Her message to me appeared on the screen. Don't you want to know why Caleb was so desperate to marry me? And the text she sent after her confession at the cafe. My mom wasn't on her deathbed. I just really wanted to marry him. It wasn't an audio recording or a hidden camera. It was the text she herself had written to me. Eleanor's face instantly turned white as chalk. Caleb turned sharply to her. You lied to me? Eleanor panicked. Caleb, I didn't mean to. I was just afraid of losing you. The last pillar of support in Caleb's eyes crumbled. A terrible noise rose in the hall. So the mother's illness was a lie too? Those two found each other. One lies, the other believes. Poor Audrey. How unlucky she was to get involved with them. Catherine gripped the table, looking like she was about to faint. I didn't stop. The last slide was the debt repayment agreement. The Davenport family had agreed to the payment schedule last night. From now on, I will act according to the agreement. The banquet for tonight is already paid for. Whoever wants to stay and eat, you're welcome. Whoever wants to leave, I'm not keeping anyone. I put down the microphone. Caleb suddenly stepped onto the stage. Everyone looked at him. He stood before me. His eyes were red. Audrey, forgive me. I looked at him. I had waited for this apology for many days, but now that I had it, I realized it was worth absolutely nothing. His voice trembled. I really understood that I was wrong. Give me one chance. I'll divorce Eleanor right now. The wedding doesn't have to be canceled. We can do it today, I cut him off. Caleb. He looked at me as if clinging to a last straw. I took the very wedding ring from my bag and dropped it into an empty champagne flute standing nearby. The ring clinked as it hit the bottom. The hall fell silent. I said, I'm not getting married anymore. Caleb stared at the ring in the glass. At that moment, he seemed to finally realize, I'm not playing the victim, not trying to drive up my price, not waiting for him to come to his senses. I have given up on him. He reached for the glass, but I covered it with my palm. Don't touch it. His hand hung in the air. This is the last time I'm returning your things to you. I removed my hand and pushed the glass toward him. From now on, we are settled. Caleb shook his head. We're not settled. His voice was quiet and full of panic. We can't just erase 5 years. We can, I replied. Audrey, don't be so cruel, I smirked. Caleb, my greatest cruelty is that I've finally stopped feeling sorry for you. Eleanor rushed onto the stage and clung to Caleb's arm. Caleb, don't do this. We're already married. He threw her hand off. You deceived me. Eleanor screamed through her tears. And you, me? You yourself said that Audrey was just a convenient option for life. You said that in your heart there was only ever me. And now that she's dumped you, you remember how good she is? These words were a knife that stripped Caleb of the last remnants of decency. A murmur rose in the hall. Caleb turned pale as a ghost. He looked at me and rushed to justify himself. Audrey, that's not what I meant. I nodded. I know. You never mean anything with anyone. He froze. I continued. You told me Eleanor was the past. You told Eleanor I was just a convenient option. You told your mother I would tolerate everything. You told your relatives the wedding was just postponed. You told each person the half-truth they wanted to hear, and you made others clean up the other half. Catherine ran up and grabbed Eleanor. Enough! Haven't you caused enough shame? But Eleanor had already snapped. It was you, the Davenports, who came running to me. You yourselves said that Audrey was too bossy, and I was obedient. And now that things have gotten hot, you're blaming everything on me. Catherine's face contorted. The relatives looked at her with contempt. Daniel, who was sitting in the audience, closed his eyes and sighed heavily. This farce no longer needed my commentary. They would devour each other on their own. I stepped off the stage. Mom came to me, took my hand. Let's go. I nodded. We had barely taken a few steps when Caleb ran down from the stage and grabbed me from behind. Audrey, I'm begging you. This was the first time I had heard the word beg from Caleb. For 5 years, he had been confident. Confident that I would wait. Confident that I would endure. Confident that I would smooth everything over. Now he had lost that confidence. But it was too late. I pulled my hand away. Caleb, do you know why I came to City Hall that day to reschedule? He froze. Because I was afraid you were overwhelmed with work on your business trip, that our reservation would expire, and you would have to stand in line again when you got back. His eyes instantly filled with tears. That day, I was sincerely worried about our wedding, and you were marrying another woman. His lips trembled, but he couldn't utter a word. So don't beg me. My voice was very quiet. Your begging only makes me feel how pathetic I used to be. I turned and walked toward the exit. Caleb tried to run after me, but hotel security blocked his path. Mr. Davenport, please settle the bill for the damaged property. Your mother just broke a flower stand in the lobby. You need to pay for the damages. Hearing this, someone in the hall couldn't help but laugh out loud. Caleb froze in place. I didn't look back. Stepping out of the hotel, I saw that the sun was shining. Chloe walked beside me and let out a loud exhale. Audrey, you were absolutely super. I smiled. My hands were trembling slightly. She looked at me. Your hands are shaking. Not from regret. Just my body still recovering from the stress. My mom squeezed my hand tightly. Let them shake. The important thing is that you broke free. I nodded. Yes, broke free not from a banquet hall, but from those 5 years. What happened after? I learned from others. Caleb and Eleanor didn't divorce right away. Not because they didn't want to, but because it turned out to be complicated. Eleanor dug in her heels, claiming she had spent her reputation and time on this relationship, and demanded compensation from Caleb. Catherine, who had disliked her from the beginning because of the rushed marriage, now feared a public scandal and took all her anger out on Caleb. Daniel fell seriously ill. The first thing he did when he recovered was to make Caleb transfer the first debt payment to me. The day the money arrived, I was unpacking boxes in a new rented apartment. A small, cozy one-bedroom. The windows faced south, the sun fell directly on the dining table. I moved the money to a separate account. Not out of sentimentality, but to remind myself. It's okay to invest sincerely, but boundaries must be clear. Caleb sought me out several times. The first time, he waited for me by my office. In his hands was a box with a pecan pie from the bakery I once loved. Audrey, I remember you love this. I looked at the pie. I used to love it, but he always forgot. I had to buy it myself and then smile and say it was okay. Now he remembered, and I no longer wanted it. I said, Caleb, you can't atone for guilt with belated care. The second time, he wrote me a huge message, detailing everything from our first meeting to how much he regretted it. I didn't reply. The third time, he asked his father to call me. Daniel said only one sentence. Audrey, I'm not asking you to come back. I just want to apologize again for Caleb. I replied, take care of yourself, Daniel, and hung up. I held no grudge against his father, but I would never return to that family. Later, Catherine came to see me herself. She stood by my building's entrance, noticeably aged. Seeing me, she didn't start with apologies. Audrey, Caleb is having a very hard time right now. I nodded. That's his problem. Her face contorted. Don't you feel sorry for him at all? I smiled. Catherine, didn't you say that no one marries calculating women? Well, no one is marrying me, and I'm living just fine. She finally lowered her head. I underestimated you before. I had once waited for that phrase too. Waited for recognition. Waited to be considered part of the family. Now, I just listened. You don't need to evaluate me, I said. Just don't bother me anymore. She left with slumped shoulders. I felt no pity. Some people don't deserve forgiveness just because they've gotten older. Her contempt had been forming for years, and my departure was not a moment of weakness. A few months later, I received an envelope. Not a wedding invitation, but a copy of a lawsuit from Eleanor Vance. Chloe laughed until she cried. They're really suing each other, her and Caleb. I scanned the text. Division of property and moral damages. Eleanor was demanding compensation for her moral suffering. The Davenports were fighting back. I threw the copy in the paper shredder. Chloe asked, You don't even want to know how it ends? I shook my head. No. She propped her chin on her hand. You've really changed. In what way? Before, you were always afraid someone would be unhappy. I smiled. And now I'm only afraid that I will be unhappy. Chloe gave me a thumbs up. Congratulations. You've finally learned to be a person. We laughed. In the evening, my mom came over for dinner. I had made 3 dishes and a soup. During the meal, she suddenly said, Audrey, now I'm at peace about you. I put some salad on her plate. I'm sorry for making you worry. She shook her head. I wasn't worried that no one would marry you. I was worried that you wanted so badly to be needed by someone that you forgot you needed yourself. My nose tingled. Mom. She stroked my hand. Live at your own pace. Marriage isn't the most important thing. The most important thing is to build your own life. I nodded. A breeze blew in through the open window. The flowers on the table swayed. I suddenly remembered that day at City Hall, how Caleb held Eleanor's hand on the other side of the glass, and I stood there, mentally wishing them happiness. Back then, that phrase was a farewell, sharp as a knife. Now, remembering it, I truly wish them well. I truly wish them well. A lifetime of happiness. And may they no longer go around breaking other people's lives. I have my own life now. The next day, I took out all the remaining old wedding invitations. The gold embossing still shone brightly on the red velvet. Caleb Davenport and Audrey Hayes. I tore them up, one by one, without tears. After tearing the last one, I swept the scraps into a trash bag. Printouts of vows, guest lists. Everything went in there too. A space cleared up on the shelf. I put a new photo album from my recent trip there. On the first page was a photograph. I am standing on a seashore without a wedding dress, without a groom. Just the wind in me. At the bottom, I wrote one sentence. Audrey Hayes, from today on, don't wait for someone to ask you to marry them. You are the one who walks yourself home.